I think the best thing I can do in just kind of this moment of overview is share with you how I see this moment we're at, and offer one big thematic concept. So I'm working on a new book on this subject, and I see the world, sort of history, is divided between what I'd call Promethean moments, moments where a new technology or way of thinking took over and didn't just change one thing, but changed everything. So the printing press was obviously a Promethean moment. The scientific revolution was a Promethean moment. The agricultural revolution was a Promethean moment. The industrial revolution was a Promethean moment. And I would argue we are now going through, have been for the last at least 3 decades, the next great Promethean moment. And the best sign of that is the way basically every major political party in the industrial world has blown up in the last 10 years. You may have noticed the Tories became a Brexit party, Labour became a Marxist party, the Liberals disappeared, the Republicans became a Trump cult, Democrats are still trying to figure out what they're going to become. France is the only country in the world that has a leader with no party and an opposition with no leader. I have no clue who governs Italy these days. So clearly something's going on, because all these left-right parties really emerged from the last great Promethean moment, the Industrial Revolution, which was such a destabilizing thing. It took us really a century to figure out how we stabilize the world after the Industrial Revolution. And we settled on this thing called the welfare state. And the welfare state was a set of walls, ceilings, and floors that would enable everyone to get the best out of the Industrial Revolution and cushion the worst. And left-right politics, binary politics, became a debate about how high the walls should be. Left said let's have high walls, right said low walls. How thick the floor should be, the safety net. Left said thick floor, right said thin floor. And how tight the ceiling should be, the ceiling on the pace of change and on incomes. Right said no ceiling, left said tight ceiling. Well, basically, the reason these parties have all blown up, I think, is because we entered a new Promethean moment. And basically what it's done is blow off the ceiling, blow away the walls, and crash through the floor. And the old left-right divisions simply aren't relevant now to manage this world. And that's why these parties either have fallen back on tribal identities or are blowing up. So what is this Promethean moment? It's actually an incredible release of energy that's allowed or enabled 3 things we've never had before. It's enabling machines to drive humans, humans to drive nature, and humans to connect with other humans at a speed, scope, scale, and intimacy we've never seen before. Let me repeat that. We're entering a world where machines are driving humans, humans are driving nature, and humans are connecting with other humans through migration and telecommunications at a speed, scope, and scale we've never seen before. And what this is basically doing is blowing up that old left-right binary grid and creating a world where to thrive, you actually need what I call complex adaptive coalitions. And that is going to reshape, I believe, our politics and is the way forward on sustainability. So let me give you an example. Basically, one of the things that happens when we enter this new Promethean moment is the world becomes really fast, really fused by both climate and telecommunications, really deep in the sense that technology goes so deep, governments don't even know where it is, and really open. So many voices and so many people can play. Now, the only way, I believe, to manage such a world of sort of multiple climate changes at once, changes in the climate of technology, changes in the climate of the climate, and changes in the climate of telecommunications, is to ask how nature does it. How does nature thrive, or which ecosystems in nature thrive when it goes through a climate change? The systems in nature that thrive are those that build complex adaptive networks, where all the elements of the ecosystem naturally network together to maximize their resilience and propulsion. Well, the same is going to be true, I believe, in our politics. The country whether it's Denmark, America, Sweden, or France, Japan, or China, that is able to pull together the most complex adaptive coalitions to bring all the relevant stakeholders together, where there is no left and right, that's the country that will do best, I believe, in this new era where machines are driving humans, humans are driving nature, and humans are interconnecting like we've never seen before. So let me just give you an example. I happened to be in Israel before the pandemic 2 years ago, and I ran into Amnon Shashua, who runs Mobileye, which is the Israeli autonomous driving company. And he said to me, Tom, have you ever driven in a self-driving car? I said, Amnon, I was just in Mountain View at Google in California, and I drove in their Waymo car. He said, Mountain View. That's a grid, Tom. Try driving in a self-driving car in Jerusalem, where there are no two parallel streets. So I came up to Jerusalem. I rode in Mobileye self-driving car, up, down, sideways, crazy hairpin turns. It was amazing for an hour with no one driving. We got done. He told me an interesting story. He said, Tom, to actually test a self-driving car in public, in the streets, you need an insurance protocol that defines what is safe self-driving. Otherwise, anything you hit or anyone hits you, you get sued. So, of course, the rabbis who run Jerusalem have no idea about safe self-driving cars. So what Mobileye did was convene a complex adaptive coalition of Volkswagen, their car supplier, Mobileye, the rabbis who run Jerusalem, and the Israeli Ministry of Transportation. And together they wrote the law for safe self-driving cars. It was so good that Russia's Yandex, it's Google, now tests its self-driving car in Israel. And China just took the whole law and translated it into Chinese and made it their law. There is no way we can govern anything, particularly the challenge we have around environment and climate, in the old binary left-right zero-sum way. The only way we're going to be able to do it is by building complex adaptive coalitions that can manage such a fast, fused, deep, and open world. Now, some countries do this quite naturally. Denmark is one of them. You have a huge advantage internally because you have a history, a legacy, and the habit of building complex adaptive coalitions between labor, business, science, and government. Other countries are really struggling with this. The most important complex adaptive coalition, though, we can build, I believe today, is between China and the United States. Because when it comes to managing climate, we have to have the truly biggest emitters. We have to have at least the top 20 emitters all working together. And I think that that's really going to be the big challenge. It's what I'm advocating, what I'm pounding the table on, because climate is a scale problem. If you don't have scale, you have a hobby. I like hobbies. I used to build model airplanes as a young boy. I wouldn't try to change the climate as a hobby. The only thing as big as Mother Nature is Father Greed. The only thing as big as Mother Nature is Father Greed, the marketplace. And the only way to get scale is when you get complex adaptive coalitions, government, business, NGOs, social entrepreneurs, working together to redesign the rules and incentives around the market. What we've done for the last since the Industrial Revolution is design rules that enabled and encouraged the market to produce CO2 and put it into the atmosphere. What we now need to do is build complex adaptive coalitions that reshape the market around clean, carbon-free, emission-free electricity, power, and manufacturing generation. That's the only way you get scale. And this is a scale problem. Without scale, you have a hobby. And I wouldn't try to change the climate as a hobby. Stop there.
We just have a few minutes for some questions. And of course, having laid out the world so well and in such a complex but yet sort of great analytical way. There's a lot to chew on. I mean, one of the questions we've been looking today at all of the things that are coming out of Denmark, and Denmark as potentially as a model country. So you touched on that before, and I'd love to get your thoughts on, is it exportable? I know you've touched on that before last time you were in Denmark. What is it? How do we make sure that the things that we've learned here can be used outside of Denmark? But secondly, when you talk of complex, adaptive coalitions, and that really needs to happen between the US and China, are you hopeful?
So, I think Denmark has so much to teach the world about this, because it really is the model, and it's highly misunderstood in America. Because you have people like Bernie Sanders saying we need America to become like Denmark, because he looks at Denmark's social safety net and healthcare and wonderful programs you have. To which I say, Bernie, Denmark is one of the most globalized countries in the world. It's got some of the biggest global corporations in the world. It embraces capitalism. Denmark doesn't work because it has social safety nets. Denmark works because it has a complex adaptive coalition between its NGOs, social entrepreneurs, government, and business that gets the best out of both. And I think so part of it is explaining to people around the world why Denmark works. Denmark works because it has Novozymes and safety nets, okay? And that it can afford both precisely because people are working together. I would be misleading you, Alexander, if I said I thought that China and America were coming closer to a complex adaptive coalition. I think I just wrote a column for next week, which which someone helped me with a lot, and it's really asking the question, 20 years from now, we just got out of Afghanistan. A lot of people saying, "Oh my God, if I only knew 20 years ago what I know now, I would have made different decisions." And the question I'm exploring next week is, what's going on now that 20 years from now we'll say, wow, if only we knew back in 2021 what we know now, we never would have let this happen. And I think that thing is US-China relations. That if we allow US-China relations to devolve into this zero-sum competition, right when we need a positive-sum game, I think it's going to be disastrous for the world economy, and for world stability. And so part of what Denmark can do as a government, and my wife and I are watching Borgen now, so we know all about your system of government, is we need Denmark. We need mediators. We need people working with the U.S. and China and explaining, do not go down this route. It'll be bad for you. It'll be bad for us if these two giant elephants fight. So I think that's actually the most productive thing Denmark could do, that make people understand its real model. And its real model is this blend, really, of capitalism, globalization, and really smart worker protections and social safety nets.
Tom, I know we're out of time, but there is one last question I think would be really great to hear your thoughts on. Well, I mean, back to the China-US relations, but also sort of geopolitics more broadly. Afghanistan, how does that play into your thinking about world leadership, both in the context of US-China relations and US relations to Europe and elsewhere? So does that tell us anything about what we can assume for future collaboration, or is it really a standalone issue?
It's a good question, Alexander. I think it's really a standalone issue. Too complex to go into in full detail here. I think we realized that we had given our all in Afghanistan. Probably didn't really know what we were doing. Need to let Afghans find their own way and try to amplify rather than occupy, but try to amplify the best things they do and contain the worst things they do, but their future needs to be driven by them and not us. And I hope in getting out, we'll be able to redirect some of those energies to, it's a cliche, but it's true, to nation building in America. A healthier America is, I think a benefit not only to its own people, but to the world. And right now, unfortunately, our politics is actually becoming more like Afghanistan's than Afghanistan's politics has become like ours. And so we need to sort that out right now, which is my other day job. But that's a much longer story. But in the meantime, Denmark can play a huge role, both as a country and as a model, and as a mediator between these two giant elephants. And we need you as all three of those things.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. So great to hear from you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.